Okay, so most of this has dried. We're gonna move on to doing this wet in wet technique, and this is what I showed you earlier as far as placing two different colors right next to each other in a wet area. So we will go ahead and wet one of these sections. Again, I am not being too precise. You can be as precise as you like, but we're going to use lots of different colors here. In this, you can see there is brown and turquoise and red and green. There's light brown and dark brown. There's yellow. And where these colors mix, they create some really cool tertiary colors as well, which is like a blue-green or a yellow-orange. And that's done unintentionally. It's just done because two colors are butting up next to each other and their borders are commingling, and in the area in between the two colors you're getting some really cool mixtures. So I'm going to start with my brown. I think this is this is a raw sienna, so it's actually very red, like a red-orange brown. And actually I'm going to do two at a time. So let's say I wet this one as well. That was a little bit kind of brown already. So maybe I'll add some more of this raw sienna. Now you can sort of see that orange really coming out. And speaking of orange, I'm going to add another little bit of orange over here where I'm using my medium yellow and an opera rose. So that's a little bit of a different orange. You can sort of see that happening. Maybe I'll add some of my sap green. Now you noticed earlier that I added a bunch of water to these colors, and that's really just so they start softening up. I might have overdone it with that green over there, but that's okay. Add a little bit of blue. No, I don't want a lot of blue, but I want this blue to maybe mix with what I've already got there, and so it's not like a circus turtle. It's really just more like variations on browns. I'm not going for tie-dye or camouflage here. Now, I've already covered the entire area with color. So if I continue to add more color in there, I might actually lose the colors themselves. They may just start getting muddied up, and I don't want that. So I'm gonna actually let these dry a little bit. They're all sort of running down to the low point, which is here on this shape and here on this shape. And so I'm gonna let them dry just a little bit, and when they're still a little bit damp, I'll come back here and I'll add a little bit more color to them. So let's go ahead and do another shape. Move up here. And this time I'll start with a little bit of yellow. It's got a little green in it too. And look, it's bleeding there, and that's fine. Maybe I'll even put some over here. Work on this shape a little bit. This time, oh, I just happen to have a little bit of purple, red violet right there. So if I'm going to do a color like a blue or a red violet or something that's really off, I do kind of want to tone it down a little bit, maybe with another color next to it, or something so it's not like yellow and red. Circus camouflage turtle. Unless, of course, that is what you're going for. And then you do whatever you want. Now, as far as mixing colors, red and green are complements. They're across from each other on the color wheel. And so when we mix colors, they're called complements that are across from each other. When we mix colors, when we mix complements, then they create a neutral. Neutral colors are colors that are browns and grays, taupes and tans, things like that. And they're just a little bit more natural colors. So if you ever want to mute a color, meaning if you ever want it to be less vibrant, if you need it, tone it down a little bit, then you can mute a color by adding its complement. Now, I haven't done any red yet, so I'm going to come back in here and do red. And I hope that this red doesn't look red. I hope that it looks like a version of brown. That's pretty decent. Now, the thing about all these colors right now is they're all the same value. Value is relative, lightness and darkness. And so right now, with the exception of maybe this portion here is rather dark, they're all the same value. And this has a lot more variation, especially like some of these very dark areas. There's not a lot, but it's really important to have a full range of values. And a full range of values, we would say that that's light and dark and everything in between. And what that does is it actually ends up looking real. If you ever have the chance to examine a black and white photograph, a good black and white photo is going to have a full range of values. It has black and it has white, and then it has everything else in between. And so you notice that here I'm grabbing what I have. It's not black, it's actually Payne's gray. I'm just darkening up a couple of those areas, getting my ultramarine blue. So I'm actually using a lot of colors here, lots of colors, but I'm trying not to let them just be standalone colors, meaning I'm trying to not have it be like a patchwork quilt. I'm letting them mix together. And if I notice that any areas start sliding or moving towards low areas, puddling, then I need to go back and put some pigment in the area where they got washed off. Now you notice that this one I actually didn't get wet first. It was already a little bit wet, but that is an option as well if some of your colors are really, really wet already and I want to keep them a little bit more separated. I can do this. So I just put down wet brown on a dry area, and then I'm going to put wet red next to it. I'm kind of moving them together a little bit with my paintbrush. Kind of mixing them, but I'm allowing them to still stay a little bit separated. Now the thing about this is it does allow you to get, your colors aren't so washed out, but it sometimes feels a little bit more controlled, like you're controlling it too much. So there's blue. And that might be like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of blue. Might be a little bit scary. But then again, if I'm going to mute a color, the complement to blue is orange. It's across from it on the color wheel. And so if I put an orange next to it, or really this brown is very orange, or this orange, then those two colors become a lot more brown. They become neutral. And it's not quite so scary. So then we're really just going to continue doing that along the whole of the shell until we get it to where we like it without being too crazy of colors. We still want them in a natural kind of color family. And so some of those reds I need to tone down, some of the splotchiness I'd like to kind of mix together just a little bit. And then I think we're almost there. We'll do the same thing down here, but I think I want the colors to probably be a little darker. And then next I'll show you how to do the head and the flippers. This is a different technique, the head and the flippers. Don't forget about this little flipper back here. This is his back leg. He can have, those can be the same technique as before. And you'll notice I'm actually doing a lot less colors, fewer colors here, fewer details, less interest. And that's really because the main focal point of this painting is the color in the shell. Secondarily, it's definitely going to be the face. We're always drawn to a face. Okay. Next, we're going to do the head and the flippers. And I'm just going to start with some really, really light, very, very light colors here. Got a little bit of yellow. I kind of like that blue that bled into there, so that's fine. Maybe I'll add a little bit of blue on this side. These are light colors. I still am trying to keep this painting pretty colorful right now. Later we'll get it a little bit darker. So on his head, I'm just going to do the same thing that I did in the first step, using very, very light washes. Now several different light washes, one on top of another, these are called glazes. But the importance of a glaze is that they must dry between layers. If it's not dry, then really all you're doing is wet and wet, which is still fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to have the variation that we're looking for here, then we're doing thin transparent layers that dry before we add other layers. You notice that I'm putting a little bit of color over here on the edge of the shell. I like that it bled. I'm fine with these little shapes touching a little bit and bleeding, and I think that's actually really nice. If you were to do these channels between the shapes too broad, too wide, they would really just look like white stripes, and maybe being a little bit messier here kind of helps them look less contrasty to the rest of the painting. Okay. Now, we do need to let these dry, so we'll let those dry, and I will come back and show you a little bit more about what to do there later.